Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I
ma'am.
may,
You may.
we have a quiet time for those who have been less fortunate in fatalities, and especially the penitent family at this time?
Absolutely. We'll have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this glorious day, our many blessings, and including the right and freedom to meet this evening so that our voices may be heard. We ask for your strength, guidance, and wisdom in our deliberations this evening, and that all are treated with dignity and respect. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum this evening. I appreciate everybody coming out on this absolutely beautiful evening. Any announcements?
Just one announcement. There is an update to the planning update that was in your packets. Next meeting, the June 20th meeting, we do have public hearings for the Columbia Gas special use case, as well as the rezoning for Ashley Ridge subdivision in the Chancellor voting district. And I also just wanted to remind the Planning Commission that the first meeting in July is canceled.
I don't think you'll find any opposition to that. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, review and approval of the minutes of May 2nd, 2018. I trust everybody's had a chance to review those. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't believe there's any unfinished business. So on to the next item, review and approval of Plat P18-0002.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the preliminary plat for Section 5 of the Village at Courthouse Commons, which consists of 60 single-family attached units with an average lot size of 2,160 square feet. The lots will be accessed from a private road within the larger development, and this version here has a little bit of zoomed out of what's already been platted, but these are single-family detached and attached lots that are already under development and construction today. And there are public and private roads within the development now, but the public road will extend south here, and then the private road is right here, will be known as DeVries Lane to serve these 60 single-family attached lots. The 60-lot subdivision is a result of a rezoning, a mixed-use rezoning that is a multiple-phase development. There's approximately 86 acres which will remain to be developed at a later date, and you will see those preliminary plats in the future as they come across. These lots will be served by public water and sewer. The preliminary plat has been reviewed and approved by the Technical Review Committee, and staff is recommending approval and asks the Planning Commission to adopt the approval resolution in your packet.
Any questions or comments? I'll take a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
You
On the
abstain.
protest.
Very well. Moving on to the next item, public hearing, rezoning R17-0012.
This This is a request to rezone approximately 6.5 acres from residential 1 to residential 8 with proffers to allow for 45 age-restricted single-family attached units to be known as the villas at Salem Church. The property is located at 5715 Rosh Drive and lies on the north side of Rosh Drive, about 500 feet east of Salem Church Road. The by right development potential with the current zoning for this property is 4 single-family detached lots. Staff is recommending approval of the request with the proffers submitted by the applicant. Here's a zoning map with the property outlined in red. You'll see the existing zoning is residential 1 and is surrounded by other residential 1 and residential 2 properties, with the Route 3 commercial corridor right there to the north. The subject property and surrounding area has a low-density residential land use designation. Per the comprehensive plan, that would allow for single-family attached or detached units with a density of 4 units to an acre at its maximum. Here is an aerial view just to orient you. Again, here's the property. The property is immediately surrounded by single-family detached residential, with the lots ranging in size from a 1/4 acre to an acre. This is the Sheraton Hills subdivision here on the west side of Salem Church Road. This is Maple Grove here on the east. Just to the south is Salem Run Apartments. Of course, the Fire Station 6 is right here to the north, Salem Elementary. And of course, Route 3 is right here with the commercial uses. Here's the applicant's generalized development plan, which shows the proposed layout of the development. The proposed entrance to the development is located near the midpoint of Rosh Drive, directly across from existing residential properties. The streets within the development will be private, serving the 45 attached units. Those proposed lots range in size from 2,470 square feet to 4,283 square feet. While the existing lots immediately surrounding this development, they're more in line with a 10,890 square feet, which is about a 1/4 of an acre. The proposed units themselves are expected to be between 1,500 and 1,600 square feet. They're villa style, most, I believe, 2 bedrooms with an option of a 3-bedroom and a 1-car garage. The applicant proposes decorative fencing and landscaping to be provided along the Rosh Drive frontage, which you'll see is highlighted here in orange. The majority of the lots are facing these internal streets. There's no direct access other than the main point of access onto Rosh Drive. The applicant is also identifying the required 25-foot landscaped transitional screen along the perimeter of the property, which is identified in green before you. The proposed development will be served by public utilities with the connection to sanitary sewer here at the north, and the water line connection will be provided by extending the existing water line that is on Salem Church Road, and there's an existing water line at the end of Lucas Drive here to the south. They'll be extending those lines to provide water service to this new development and fire protection. The benefit of that is that there are the properties on Rosh Drive currently have private wells, and they would have the opportunity to connect if they wanted to.
Excuse me, if I have a question, do we still have connection fees, and how much are they?
We do have connection fees, but I don't know the exact cost right now. I could follow
Thank
up.
you.
The water line stops at Lucas Drive, which is right here to the south, and at the end of Rosh Drive at Salem Church. So there will be, I believe, the addition of a hydrant with this development. At the community meeting, the concerns raised by the citizens was the number of units. At that time, the applicant was proposing 50 age-restricted attached units, and they had traffic concerns as well, the increased traffic, of course. Staff shared those concerns related to the number of units as With 50 units, that was exceeding the low-density residential density that's envisioned, which is 4 units an acre. So the applicant did reduce the number of lots to 45. Of course, this still exceeds the 4 units an acre. This is more about 6.6 units an acre. And so it's still inconsistent with the land use designations density. It also is not entirely still in keeping with the character of Ross Drive. These are smaller lots, significantly smaller lots, and of course it's attached units versus detached units, which they're surrounded by. But it is important to note, to meet that density of 4 units an acre, this would need to be a 30-unit project. And a 30-unit non-age restricted project would have more impacts than what's before you tonight, related to traffic and, of course, impacts to schools.
Excuse me if I interrupt one more time. You're telling us that by right they could build what, how many, 30 units?
No, for by right, they can only have 4 single-family detached. I was just making a comparison. The future land use map envisions a density of 4 units per acre, and that would be 30 attached units. And I'm saying with 30 non-age restricted units, that's more impactful. It would meet the density envisioned for the area, but it's actually more impactful to schools and to traffic than what's before you tonight, because this is age restricted.
But this recommended new situation of these 30 units we're talking about, that's coming at us down the road? That's recommended?
That would be that would be in line with the comprehensive plan's density goals for this area.
Thank you very much.
Access to the development will be provided, as I said, to Ross Drive, which is a local road. The most recent VDOT traffic counts for Ross Drive actually date back to 2014, but at that time, the average daily trips were 45. This project is expected to generate approximately 155 daily trips, which is not significantly going to impact the current levels of service. Now, Salem Church Road, of course, has levels of service of D or E. The majority of these new trips from this development are going to be taking a right. They're going to be going northbound on Salem Church. So, of course, there will be more concerns if they're going left, having to have that unprotected left turn movement. But the majority will be taking a right on Salem Church Road. But again, still with 155 daily trips, this is not going to significantly impact the existing levels of service on Salem Church Road either.
If I may, once more, you just touched on the subject. What's the traffic flow rate to require a light?
I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. I can tell you from a impact to level of on the level of service for this project to degrade the level of service, it would have to be 1,000 trips, and we're at 155 with the proposal.
Because I come through there quite often, and I've watched these people try to get out on the street, and I've seen them stacked up 5 and 6 cars, and traffic's just flying down the road, and they can't get out now. I was just curious as to what it takes to put a light. Thank you.
As with any rezoning request, staff will complete an analysis for consistency with the comprehensive plan. This proposal was consistent with the land use component goals and policies and the level of service standards for the Sheriff's Department, Water and Sewer, Library, and Solid Waste. It's also consistent with natural resources and historic resources goals. This area is, this project is within an area that's identified as being areas associated with the Battle of Fredericksburg and the Salem Church battlefield. However, this property has been farmed, it's been disturbed. There was a field survey, no historic resources were identified. With respect to natural resources, this project will not be impacting on-site streams or wetlands, and they are preserving over 36% of open space. That exceeds the R8 requirement of 25%. And the majority of that open space will be usable for active and passive recreational uses. There were identified impacts related to land use. Of course, it's the density issue that I just discussed. The proposed density is 6.6 units an acre. The goal for this area, the density and vision for this area is 4 units an acre. There's also impacts to fire rescue and emergency services, and there's already capacity issues with countywide public safety facilities, and specifically Station 6, which would serve this property, is also over capacity. Parks and Recreation also has existing level of service issues, and so this project would impact those as well. And I'll say that the applicant has provided a cash proffer to mitigate those impacts, and I'll give you more detail on that in the proffer analysis.
Question there, please. Kim, you said impact on Park and Rec, but this is age restricted. So how do we calculate Park and Rec impact?
Well, there's still Parks and Recreation facilities that even an age-restricted development would be able to utilize, with community centers and the park areas, the picnic shelters. You know, there's still
Okay.
facilities that can be utilized. It's not just for sports.
And they proffered, what did you say?
They provided a cash proffer to mitigate their impact. And so staff did as we have with all of our recent rezonings, we are analyzing projects' attributable impact on capital facilities when there's a capacity issue. And so we did that with this project, and they have provided a cash proffer that's legally acceptable based on the New Virginia State Code proffer legislation.
So that proffer could go towards like the community centers if they needed to be upgraded, is that correct?
It has to go towards those facilities that are currently in our capital improvements plan.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Kimberly, are you saying on the previous slide on fire and rescue, 6 over capacity, are you saying that fire and rescue are at that particular station is understaffed? Or
Their call volume exceeds the 2,500 standard for our rescue stations. And so I believe their call volume was over 3,600 annual calls.
so do we have a way of knowing what this new project would generate in a way of?
For the number of calls?
Calls.
Yes, sir. We estimated that this development would generate approximately 7 calls annually.
Yeah, you know, I had one other question too. I didn't want to interrupt you a while ago, but how do we come up with knowing that majority of the vehicles coming out of there will be making a right-hand turn?
We have, our traffic engineer has a model, and so he runs a traffic analysis model to give us and those are all based on formulas and projections and traffic history data. I mean, it's still an estimate. It's still it's a guesstimate, but.
You could force them to go right.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
You could put a island in to force them to go right. Right?
Yeah.
Who?
What-
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
Go ahead. No,
absolutely.
you go ahead and finish.
No, I'm just wondering if fire rescue, obviously they reviewed this, how does a fire truck turn around in here? I thought we typically put in cul-de-sacs or
Yes, sir.
hammerheads.
So right here, this is the turnaround here. So
So-
this meets the design standards for the fire apparatus to be able to come here and then make that turn out, and then here as well.
So they would actually turn around into a parking lot?
Here,
On the right
and then
side.
here.
Wasn't
If I may,
Go ahead.
right. Kim, you have one entrance here, is that correct? And but if something went in by right, you would have more entrances, am I correct? If you had
You would have 4 driveways.
4 driveways, 4
Yes, ma'am.
entrances, right? 4 turning vehicle, okay, gotcha.
Continue, please, Kim.
The applicant provided a fiscal impact analysis which asserts that the villas at Salem Church will have an average sales price of $250,000 and generate revenue to the county in the amount of $121,730 annually at build-out. Staff conducted a separate analysis using the county's model. We used a assumed assessed value of $226,250. We used the River Crossing Villas, which is there at River Road and Bragg Road next to Spring Arbor Memory Care. It was a comparable product in the county. We utilized their average assessed value, and with that, our model projected that the project would generate $65,540 annually at build-out. It's not uncommon for these numbers to be different. Our model is admittedly a conservative model, but I think it's important to note that they're both trending positively. The applicant has provided proffers for the Planning Commission's consideration. The first being development in conformance with the generalized development plan that we just reviewed. This is an on-site proffer and consistent with the state code. They provided a proffer which limits the use of the property to the 45 single-family age-restricted units. The property can only be utilized for this use. There's other secondary uses that would not be permitted with this condition. The property will also be encumbered with age-restricted covenants. This would be to ensure the occupancy of these units would be housings for older persons. It would meet the state code definition of housing for older persons, so that at least one person must be 55 years or older. It would also limit the amount of time where someone 18 or younger could stay or visit. The property will also be encumbered with covenants and restrictions. The homeowners association will be established, and this is to ensure the maintenance and ownership and of all the open space and common area for the development. There will be approximately 2.5 acres of open space preserved with this development. Of course, I said that it does exceed the minimum requirement for the R8 district. And the applicant is providing a cash proffer totaling over $7,000. That comes to $156 per unit. And as I noted, that is specifically to mitigate this project's impact, to the public safety and parks and recreation facilities. The findings in favor for this development identified by staff include that this project is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan with respect to land use, public facilities, historic and natural resources, goals and policies. Except for the higher than envisioned density of the 4 units per acre, this project is less impactful as proposed than, as I said, a non-age restricted 30-unit development would be. The applicant has proffered cash contributions in order to mitigate their impact on capital facilities, which are specifically attributable to their project. These are legally acceptable by the board per the parameters established by the Virginia Code. The Villas at Salem Church is projected to generate positive revenue for the county. The project is an infill project proposed on an underutilized property within our primary development boundary. And this project will extend a water line across Ross Drive to serve the development, which will consequently allow those existing properties to connect to public water if they so desire. Yes, ma'am.
Along that area, most of that property is also zoned commercial, am I correct?
Which property, Ms. Carter?
Along the, in close proximity of the Ross Drive. Talk about public water and sewer. Don't we have commercial along Salem Church Road?
It is, this particular map doesn't pick it up, but if you can see the little tip right here at the bottom, closer to where the library is, there is commercial just south of this property. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Findings against this proposal is not in keeping with the existing development pattern and character of Ross Drive as it relates to smaller lot sizes and the attached unit type versus the detached unit type. And the proposal exceeds the maximum density envisioned for development with a low-density residential land use designation. With that, based on the the proposal's consistency with the comprehensive plan and the findings in favor, staff is recommending approval for the rezoning with the proffered conditions. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, are there other age-restricted residences in this area?
The apartments there's a component right here of these Salem Run apartments that are age-restricted.
Oh, I thought there was something down Ross Drive. They're just single-family detached homes on
Yes,
larger
sir.
lots.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kim? All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Planning Commission, my name is Charlie Payne with the law firm Herschel Fleischer. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you to staff as well for their presentation. We have a PowerPoint, and Kimberly, I believe I'm going to need your help with this and moving the PowerPoint one way or the other. As staff had noted, this is an age-restricted project, and I'll get into some more details about the project. One of the vision of my client regarding this type of project in this area is, as you saw that overall map, it doesn't really include, and Mr. Thompson asked this question, it doesn't include a lot of housing stock that is age restricted. In fact, we're finding a lot of that to be true in the county as well. As we have an aging community, folks that we want to be able to stay and retire in the community, this housing option is positive. It's also positive to have it in a diversified development area like Salem Church Road, which does have a mix of commercial, it has a mix of single-family attached and detached and multifamily very close by. And as staff has also noted, this is within an older subdivision, so you'll see a lot of this infill redevelopment happening in the county, which is a very positive thing in my opinion, especially not only to the surrounding property owners who are looking to perhaps retire and sell their properties, but also for purposes of impacts on the county. When it's age-restricted, there's no impact on schools, and schools are the biggest impact, and it's also a lower impact on transportation. So those are sort of the key components to the vision behind this, and also providing an affordable product. Many seniors and retirees are having a difficult time finding affordable housing in the area without having to move somewhere else or getting something that's not they're accustomed to. So this, too, is a very quality project, but also very affordable. So with that, as staff has noted, this is a 6.65 acre parcel. It's located off Ross Drive near the intersection of Ross and Salem Church Road. Again, not very far from the intersection of Route 3. As you all know, that Route 3 has also had some significant improvements at that intersection, including an additional right turn lane from that site. We are proposing from R1 to R8 so that we can do these villas. We did have a community meeting. There were some concerns about the amount that we had initially had put forward, which was 50, and we addressed that, including what the potential impacts could be to our neighbors. As stated, this is age-restricted, family-style villas, and under R8 sub-district, single-family attached are permitted as a use. We have provided over 36.5% open space, which exceeds a minimum under R8. When we went to the community meeting, the neighbors said, don't take down all the trees, please provide some buffer, especially those at Maple Grove, and we've done that. The open space we'll use, as I had stated, for buffering and natural areas. You'll also see that we've got some areas where our citizens, our local residents can actually gather and be in the areas there on site. It's anticipated that if this is approved, we will be able to commence and complete construction in 2 or 3 years. Staff has also noted, and I'll get through this pretty quick, what's around us. To the west is single-family, detached, and vacant property. Also to the north and east are single-family and detached, known as Maple Grove. To our immediate south is Ross Drive, and across from Ross Drive is single-family, but just a little bit further south of that is multifamily. As I said, there's a diversified of residential uses in this area. We are nearby the commercial on both north and south on Salem Church Road, which would make this attractive site for our potential homeowners. And again, the impacts on existing residents of the property will be mitigated through the buffering and the transitional screening areas, which we'll show in this slide as well. Can't read that from here, so I'm going to have to, it just goes to show you, getting up in age there. Just some key elements of the comprehensive plan that staff had noted, that although this is low residential for future land use, staff had noted, and we had reiterated in our application, the fact that if we were to follow the comp plan and do 30 single-family detached units, it'd have a greater impact, if you will, on our immediate neighborhood and on the county, including on schools and traffic. In fact, the traffic would be double what we're proposing. And of course, it'd be impact on schools. This also furthers the objectives of the comprehensive plan on county services, like I said, like schools. This helps create, age-restricted typically helps create new jobs and generates positive net revenues for the county, and also diversifies our housing inventory. From an economic development perspective, as I stated, both the on-site and off-site spinoff from this development will be positive. We'll get into a few more details about that as well. And again, we will ensure this will be age-restricted. If this is approved, obviously our proffers are requiring it be age-restricted, and that would be covenants that will run with the land and ensure that no school-age students will live in the homes. The other real positive thing about this project is, if you're familiar with this particular area, it doesn't have water and sewer, I believe, along Ross Drive. This project will extend utilities to that site, which will improve not only sort of the public utilities for those properties, but also the value of those properties. So extending utilities to this site will improve our neighbors' value of the property, but also will be a public safety benefit as well, because then it'll be more positive for purposes. There is an incident for fire suppression in that area. Next slide. Here's the GDP. You have it in your packet. And you can see where we'll be accessing Ross Drive. But the next slide, please, Kimberly, is a little more easier to see and shows you what I was just talking about. If you see to the north, there's the tree line area there. That hatch line that runs to the north behind our project is a easement area that's been undisturbed for many years. We're not disturbing that. You'll see that we're also providing a 25-foot wide transitional buffer and be replanting that area as well. Also providing a transitional buffer to our north, all around the property, quite honestly, south, east, and north. You'll see that we have open areas for the community to the south there, a little gazebo and some other effects will be in that area. We'll also have community areas to the northeast there. You'll see that the sidewalks will be all connected, creating some walking opportunities for our residents. I mean, this is intended to be somewhat of a private residence and community, if you will, for those who will eventually live there. For purposes of access, at the community meeting, there was concern about coming directly out and impacting the property to our south, immediate south. You'll see that we've created this island here that extends into the project. Much of that will be landscaped up front. You'll see a little jog that we have there too that pushes the vehicles to the west, if you will, which will push the impact of those vehicles, if they're getting out at night, away from the immediate south, so that those impacts to the homes to the south would not be impacted. So we've taken into consideration the discussion we had at the community meeting with our neighbors, buffering and reducing impacts, You'll also note that we've got decorative fencing all along the front of our site and then landscaping as well to even further reduce those impacts. So a lot of thinking went into this proposal and being good neighbors. Next slide. As staff has discussed about the fiscal impacts, the proposed units will be about $250,000, 1,500 to 1,600 square feet. There'll be nice quality villas, nice architectural features. Whether you and your spouse could move in there, or a widow or a widower could afford to move in there. Again, a community intended to attract those who are retired in the later stages of their lives, want to independently live and be in a neighborhood where a lot of your amenities would be taken care of and on-site community feel. Our fiscal impact analysis also demonstrated that we create about 20 jobs off-site as well, in addition to the construction jobs that would occur for purposes of building out the project. And that number is about $500,000 in annual employee earnings. And then our analysis, when we do this analysis, the county does their comparable model on real estate tax. Typically, we look at everything, all the taxes be generated on site with personal property, and also real estate, but we also look at the spin-off. Those folks who do have some disposable income, they do go and spend those monies locally, typically. Schools, this is a slide real quick that you'll see no impacts on schools with age restricted, which is a very positive return for the county. Access to the property, as staff has noted and has been part of the presentation that I've provided, will be from Ross Drive. Roads internally will be private. They'll be maintained by the homeowners association, as well all the open space areas as well. Just during peak hours, and this is not taking into account who's living in these residences. This is the model that we have to use that VDOT provides to us for single-family attached units. Just using that model, you'll see just during peak hours, it's 18 vehicles per day in the AM and 16 in the PM. And that's not taking into account that we've got folks who are here who are more than likely retired who are living there. And again, no impact on level of services, the intersection of Ross Drive and Salem Church Road. As staff had noted, this project wouldn't require a transportation impact analysis because it's so small. But I thought it was an excellent point that was made by staff that you basically would have to generate 1,000 trips to impact the level of services at Ross Drive and Salem Church Road. Public safety, there's been some discussion about that. We're addressing that in our proffers. Again, we're both, the county and us, are restricted by what the state code requires. They'll have a minimal impact, 7 calls a year as estimated. Fire Station 6 is literally right around the corner from us. No new stations are planned in the CIP, which has an impact on what the proffers would be in the first place. But the expansion of Station 6 bunk room would be triggered for purposes of the legislation. So we're proffering towards that as well. Next slide, I'm sorry. Again, proffers.
Wrap it up real quick, Charlie.
I'm sorry. Yeah, again, proffers. I'm sorry, didn't mean to go over my time. Again, proffers is age restricted, and you'll see what we're doing per unit to address fire and rescue in parks. I think that's it, and I'm happy to answer your questions you have.
Any questions or comments for the applicant? One quick one, Charlie, is street parking allowed in this?
No, they will have on-site parking, and there's some additional parking that we've got within the development. I don't know if go back to the color slide, you'll see that.
But no parking actually on the streets?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will open up the public hearing on this application. When you come to the podium, if you wish to speak to this application, you'll have 3 minutes. There's a light on the podium there that will be green. When it turns to yellow, you'll have 1 minute, and when it turns to red, I would just ask that you wrap it up. And do we have anybody speaking tonight?
Cynthia Stoneham, followed by Hartwell Stoneham.
If you just state your name and your voting district, if you know it, that'd be great.
My name is Cynthia Stoneham. I'm in the Cortland voting district. I just have a quick question on this proposed development. I'm confused as to why, if it is not in compliance with the number of units per acre, why we're comparing it to 30 units, which would be in compliance, of non-age restricted. To me, that's comparing two totally different things. Why aren't we looking at the possibility of 30 age-restricted developments, which is in compliance and would not have an impact on the schools because it's what the original plan was in the first place? That's my question, is why are we comparing it to 30 units that aren't age-restricted? That's not even part of the proposal.
It will allow the applicant to respond to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hartwell Stoneham, followed by Annie Hilliard. Okay. Annie Hilliard, do you wish to speak? Followed by Margaret Bailey.
My name is Linda Hilliard. I'm a 5710 Ross Drive. My concern is, I was listening to him when he spoke about the traffic coming off the Ross Drive only to the right. Now, I'm a bus driver for Spotsylvania County, and it takes me about 15 to 10 minutes to get across that road morning and afternoon. So that's my concern about the traffic and bringing more traffic in on Ross Drive. How am I supposed to get that bus out of there in the mornings and get it back in the afternoon if more traffic is coming in? That's one of my main concerns.
Ms. Bailey, followed by Tina, I think Hiller. I can't read the writing.
My name is Margaret Bailey, and I want to say that this project will impact all of the families that live in single-family dwellings on Ross and Lucas Street. Many families have enjoyed the area for years, and the project for the elderly, it's a nice project because I'm getting up in age and I'm elderly. But the ingress and egress should be on another side instead of that Main Street Ross, because there are no sidewalks. When you do a project, you got to think about all the families, grandchildren, children that walk in the subdivision to the Fast Mart, to the library, to the different places. With the increased traffic, with no sidewalks, with no curbs, no gutters, no lights, no public lights. You got lights on your front porch. A few little lights, but no traffic light. It's just going to be a mess. It's just going to be a mess. Single families is what this subdivision was created for, and to change it, it's gonna be just. I mean, it's gonna open up a whole new world for everybody that lives over there. A lot of the elderly people that will be living in that subdivision, that development that's going to be created. Some of them drive at night. If they come out of the subdivision and if they go to the right, if they be forced to make that right turn instead of making that left turn, because like you say, I have sat there and not been able to get out for a good little while. There should be some traffic lights there. There should be something. And we think about with the increased traffic, it's going to be increased vandalism in the area. There are a lot of concerns that haven't been addressed. There's going to be construction trucks in and out there. The road hasn't been paved in years. There's going to be construction trucks moving up dirt and dust. It's just going to upset a lot of people. If they find another entrance, another way to come in and out, that would be more appropriate, in my opinion. Thank you.
Tina, I believe Hiller and Shirley Canada. Not speaking. Is there a Tina that wanted to speak? Okay. Shirley Canada doesn't want to speak. Sandra Williams? No? Catherine Hilliard? Okay. That's all signed up.
Very well. Would the applicant like to respond to? Excuse me. Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely.
I'm James Strother from Chancellor, voting district, and I own property next to this project, and I think it's a good project, and I hope y'all see the way to support it. It's really a good project. It's affordable. Older people got to live somewhere, and I think it's a good project. Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to speak that hasn't signed up? Okay, hearing none, the applicant wishes to respond.
I jumped up too quick.
That was my fault.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, other members of the Planning Commission. I appreciate your time this evening, and I appreciate comments from the community. And we heard some of these comments before at the meeting. In fact, there was a lot more people there than here this evening. So maybe we have done some good things here in that regard. But we did consciously think about that in our plan, what the concerns were of the community. I heard someone say something about no sidewalks. There are sidewalks in this project. They're outside our fencing area, and of course they're accessible to the public as well. In contemplating what would be the highest and best use for this site, we didn't think that single-family detached market-rate homes were the highest and best use for the reasons that people are concerned this evening, that it would have an impact on traffic, have an impact on schools. If there's obviously no school-age kids, there's no impacts to the school system, no additional bus stops, if you will, for this project. And then during peak hour impacts, the peak hour impacts with this proposal are much, much more significantly reduced than what we could do pursuant to the vision of the growth for this area. Again, this is a little bit of an older neighborhood. It doesn't have water and public utility connections. There's an opportunity here for our neighbors to take advantage of that, to improve the value of their properties, and likewise increase public safety in this particular area. So all of those things were things that we thought about, including putting a very quality project at this site that's affordable for those who are in the retirement stage of their lives. So that was our thinking, that was our vision, that was what we were contemplating during this process. And again, we didn't ignore anything that the community said. In fact, we reduced the units, increased the buffering, restructured our access points. And of course, again, age-restricted is a very, very positive development in any community, and certainly in a community where there's a need for it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have and appreciate your time this evening.
Any other questions, comments? At this point, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no other comments, I will take a motion on this application.
Please, Chair. I sympathize with this community. I truly do. But according to staff, this worse can come your way with these 30 units, with all the kids and extra traffic that the teenagers are going to be driving up and down your streets. And based on that, I'm going to recommend approval. Also, with a caveat, I've asked staff if we can have some kind of a contact with VDOT, because I'm very interested in light or some kind of traffic control for these folks. Thank you.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, motion passes. Thank you very much, Kim. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, special use permit 17-0006.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Patrick White, Planning Department. Thank you for your time this evening. This case is a special use permit request on behalf of the St. Patrick Catholic Church. It's located in the Chancellor Voting District. The request is for the special use permit on a 17.81 acre parcel addressed at 9151 Ely's Ford Road to allow the expansion of an existing place of worship and private school on a rural zoned property. The property is outside of the primary development boundary. It's identified for institutional development per the comp plan, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. The property is located on the east corner of the intersection of Ely's Ford Road and US Ford Road. US Ford Road branches off of Ely's Ford just west of the subject property. The estates of Chancellorsville neighborhood abuts to the north and to the east. Land owned by the National Park Service abuts to the south and across the street to the west. The top photo is a photo of the existing church. I took this photo from the parking lot. The bottom photo is panning to the right, viewing south. The top photo is about face, turning around and panning to the north. And the bottom photo is looking across Ely's Ford Road. One of the things we'll be talking about tonight is screening. The top photo is a photo of an existing screening yard between the subject property and adjacent home in the wintertime, and the bottom in the summertime. So the request itself consists of two new structures. The first structure to be built immediately, the second structure to be built at a future date uncertain. The first structure would be a church and a school, approximately 16,730 gross square feet. The second structure, which I've depicted in kind of a red outline, would consist of a gymnasium and school. It is proposed to be under 22,000 square feet, and it will occur at a future time. Following construction of the first structure, there are 3 on-site portable classrooms, or also known as trailers, that are proposed to be removed. Access to the property is provided by both Ely's Ford Road and US Ford Road. Ely's Ford Road is estimated to move approximately 5,000 vehicles a day. US Ford Road approximately 800. The trip generation data for this proposed development estimates that a total of 460 and 153 vehicles per day are expected on Sundays at Ely's Ford and US Ford entrances respectively. And during the weekday, the private school is estimated to generate approximately 420 and 140 vehicles per day onto the same roadways, respectively. Additional parking is also proposed on this GDP, which will be required as the property develops. The applicant is also proposing a new dry pond that's labeled a bioretention facility on the GDP before you, which is necessary to treat water runoff resulting from these new impervious areas.
Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Dry pond, could you explain
Dry
that?
pond.
Explain that again.
Sure. Water is routed to the bioretention facility, the dry pond. There's wet ponds and there's dry ponds. The dry ponds are not expected to take on as much water as the wet ones are. This particular pond, as I spoke with the applicant about it previously, should not have any more than a foot or two of water in it, and is supposed to drain out in about 2 days. And if I'm incorrect about anything, please correct me in the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant is proposing a transitional screen 2 along the north and eastern property lines. That was originally proposed to be a transitional screen 1. We'll touch on that more in a minute. The code requires a transitional screen 1 when a place of worship abuts a single-family residence. So what they're proposing now is above that. The buffer along the eastern property line, which I've shown in a beige color, is proposed to be basically a 35-foot tree preservation area, for lack of a better term. At the present time, there are no additional plantings that are proposed to go in that transitional screen, but 35 feet of it will be preserved the way it is today. The buffer that's shown in the blue outline is going to be enhanced with additional plantings, at a minimum 35 large evergreens, 70 medium evergreens, and 8 large deciduous trees. Now, in order for us to verify that that transitional screen 2 is met, when they come in for site plan, we'll be requesting a tree survey from them to see that those trees are planted and that the existing trees that compromise that transitional screen 2 are in place.
Is that a 35-foot wide buffer as well?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. The code allows for what we call averaging of these. It is mostly 35 feet, but there are portions of it that are not completely 35 feet.
So is it a buffer or is it not?
I would say it's still a buffer, but there are some portions of that buffer that do not fully get to 35 feet in width.
So I'd like for you to point out to me where that happens, if you would.
I can, sir.
I don't know if you have it on another slide, but. Well, let me ask you, that's okay, Patrick.
Okay, perhaps I'll finish the presentation while they're presenting. I'll load up that image.
Yeah, please do, but I want to know why they're not maintaining the 35-foot buffer. What's impeding that? It's either a buffer or it isn't, correct?
It's being intruded into in order to build an access road, a gravel access road that would connect to the bioretention facility at the back of the property, amongst some other access.
So is that allowed in a buffer? This is a screening. This is a screening buffer.
It is a screening buffer. You can intrude into buffers in certain instances. Yes.
And this is one of them. Obviously.
While it does not bisect the buffer, which would be more ideal to only have it go, straight through it at one time, because this is it's a special use permit. There's some flexibility in the buffer.
Well, continue on.
Let's see where I left off. Okay, so one of the things that we discovered through the course of this review was that the height of the proposed structure 1, the church, exceeded the maximum height that was allowed in the RU zoning district. Because the way that height is measured in the county is unless that building is within 10 feet of a front property line, it takes into account the average grade of the land and basically the average roof height. And in that calculation, I found that they were exceeding it by 6 feet. And in the RU zoning district, the Planning Commission doesn't have the ability to provide any flexibility or modification to that. So the applicants graciously provided enough time they basically went through the Board of Zoning appeals process and ultimately received approval from them for the structure to be at the height it is proposed to you tonight. They provided the recommendation, however, that a transitional screen 2 be in place instead of a normal transitional screen 1.
The transitional screen 2 where?
Along the north and the east property lines. So there are 8 standards of review that are analyzed in a special use application. They're detailed in your report. I'll briefly summarize them before you now. Firstly, the proposal is in general compliance with the comprehensive plan and other plans and codes. The proposal is generally consistent with surrounding uses, coverage, density, and character, although, as I mentioned before, there was that modification for the height. The proposed use is existing, and its expansion should not hinder neighboring development nor property values. No adverse impacts are expected regarding health or safety. The proposal should not be detrimental to the public welfare or that of neighboring properties. The proposed use has adequate access to facilities, but requires well and septic facilities due to the lack of available county water and sewer services. It's outside of the PDB. No traffic hazards nor congestion are expected from the proposal. And lastly, the property does contain earthworks in the form of canyon emplacements and trench lines. It's believed to be the site of quote-unquote Hooker's last line. Staff is recommending a condition to prohibit disturbance within this culturally significant area.
Explain that to me, Patrick.
Sure.
Do you have a condition where that explains that?
That's
you'll get to?
correct.
Okay, I'll wait for it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
One question, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
On the height, the 6 foot?
6 foot?
And that is because of the grade of the property, am I correct?
That's right. The front grade of the property is substantially higher than the rear grade. Because we define height using this averaging, it exceeded the maximum height.
Thank you.
Okay, picking back up on the presentation, there are only a few slides left. There are summary slides and then the final slide. Staff reviewed the case and found the following in favor. The church has been located on the property since the early 1980s. In 1993, it was expanded to provide private schooling and has since grown with relative harmony in relation to its neighbors. Its expansion will allow new members of the church and provide a better learning environment for the students by relocating them from portable classrooms into permanent space. The applicant has snugged the access path closer to the south in order to provide the widest buffer area that they can on the north buffer, and have proposed to place additional trees in the northern buffer to better screen the land use. These were the findings against. The applicant's proposal currently includes the development of drain fields in a culturally significant area. Staff's recommended condition to prohibit this. Lastly, secondly, we observed a level of service reduction expected from a B to a C during weekday peak hours on Eli's Ford Road. It's worth noting that the comprehensive plan recommends that the roads like this have a level of service C, so it's still in compliance with that. Lastly, the two structures are estimated to provide a little under 4,000 square feet of space. They'll, at minimum, accommodate a sanctuary of over 608 seats, an enrollment of 226 students, church offices, fellowship hall, future gymnasium. Presently, staff is not recommending any maximum student enrollment or any maximum amount of seats in the sanctuary, instead treating the structures themselves as the limiting factor of the church's growth. So at the point when the church needs more than these two structures, they would come back in to amend their special use permit. But we have not proposed to any condition like they may not have more than 300 students on site.
Doesn't your drain field prohibit growth?
Well, you mean the condition that I'm recommending?
Yes.
I certainly hope not. There are other reserved drain fields on the property, and I believe that they can be used in lieu of this one.
But prohibiting the use of that drain field does in fact limit their growth.
I would say
because that's, I mean, the calculation is based off a number of students or, right?
Well, I certainly would like to hear what the applicant has to say about it, but from my own personal perspective in reviewing this case, would kind of focused in on that drain field, not that culturally significant area, because there are existing earthworks in it, there are these cannon pits in it, there were findings in it, and it just, to me, it didn't make sense to permit a drain field in it.
Is that, you know, is that the county's position or your personal position?
Well, I believe the county would agree that when we have culturally significant areas such as earthworks or cannon pits, and there are items found within these areas, that we shouldn't build buildings or put drain fields in them.
Even though it's private property?
Even though it's private property. We've certainly required other cases to put conservation easements over areas like that.
That include a drain field?
That would include a drain field. I mean, to build
we've
a
had
drain
other
field.
cases. We've had other cases where we've prohibited or had cultural resources set aside that what I consider a very valuable resource to the church is that drain field.
I'm sorry,
For the simple fact that if a drain field fails, and they do fail, what recourse does the church have if we take this reserve drain field away from them? Is the county therefore going to extend water and sewer, or at least sewer, to this facility?
That's a valid consideration, sir, and if you'd like to strike my recommendation, you're certainly welcome.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but, yeah, wrap it up.
So staff is recommending approval with a few conditions. Firstly, that the special use permit would supersede any previous permissions or conditions associated with the formal special use, former conditional use permits from 82 and 92. Secondly, that the property will develop in conformance with the GDP as presented to you tonight. Thirdly, that the design of the first structure will be in accordance with the design elevations that are in your packet. Thirdly, that when the design is complete for the second structure, it still must conform with the county code referenced there. That's a county code that references the development of churches in the rural zoning district that is intended to basically make them look like they belong in a rural Spotsylvania setting. It has some material specifications and some color specifications. The fifth condition, excuse me, this one was one that we'd worked with the applicant, that the place of worship will not exceed 608 seats or the occupancy limit by the fire marshal. Sixth, that the development, including the construction of the septic fields within the identified boundary of the site 44 SP 0638 is prohibited. And seventh, that no temporary parking of vehicles shall occur on Ely's Ford nor US Ford Road. It's only a 2-lane road. With that, I'll stand by for your questions. I know the applicant has a presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Well, apologize for the interruptions, Patrick. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, well, did you have a slide, Patrick, that showed the existing drain fields that are being used and the reserve drain fields and how they relate property-wise that we can take a look at?
This image depicts them fairly well. There is a located drain field that my mouse is on now. It's called A. There is a B right here. There is a C here and a D here, an E up here, an F, and drain field G, which is the largest.
And which one, do you know which ones are the primary drain fields and which ones are reserve?
I do have that data on the GDP. I'm just going to have to look for it.
Or is that in is in your presentation? Okay. If you can't find it, that's all right.
No, I can find it. Drain field A is existing. Drain field B is reserved. Let me get those in front of you again real fast. Okay, so A is an existing drain field in use. B is a reserve drain field, that's this one. C is a reserve drain field, this one. D is an existing drain field in use, this one. E is an existing drain field in use. F and G are reserves.
So along the, what would be south boundary line, the other cross hatching is also a restricted area? What is that? I can't read your plan.
On the south end is a small overlay of a historic overlay district boundary.
So does that preclude the use of that? Okay. So what you're suggesting is drain field G?
It's most impacting drain field G, and drain field F would just need to be cut shy a little. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Patrick? We'll hear from the applicant.
And If the applicant would like, they can advance the slides by saying next slide, or they can join me up at the desk and drive. No, not one bit.
Good evening, Chairman Newhouse and members of the commission. My name is Jonelle Cameron with Walsh Colucci. I am here tonight on behalf of the Catholic Diocese and St. Patrick Church. I have with me Deacon Stenstrom, Father Ziegler from St. Patrick, Bob Nash from the diocese, and Shannon Madison, who's the civil engineer. So if you have some questions that I'm not able to answer, I have people on standby that can. The property, as Patrick indicated, is located at 9151 Elise Ford Road and is comprised of approximately 17.81 acres. Of that, the applicant is proposing an increase or to develop on 3.15 acres for impervious area, which is approximately less than 20% of the entire site. The property is zoned RU Rural and comprehensively planned I institution. The special use permit is required in the RU district and is compatible with the long use land range plan. This aerial here is an aerial that shows the existing layout of the church. Here is the church, here is the school, and here is the existing rectory on site. The existing school serves children's ages pre-K 3 through 8th grade. The middle school children are currently, as Patrick indicated, in the trailers that are located on the sites, here, here, and here. This slide is a color illustrative of the general development plan. The areas in the lighter green here and here are existing vegetation that will remain undisturbed, and the areas here are the cleared areas. The areas that are a little bit darker on site, and I hope you can see it on your screens, here, here, and here are existing parking areas and the travelway. The travelway was designed to be able to serve the bioretention facility, the water filtration facility, and then there is also a well that's here. In addition, the applicant worked with the fire marshal's office to be able to determine the best place for fire access in case there's an emergency to serve behind the existing school, which they don't have today. The area here, and I'll get to it also on the next slide when we discuss landscaping, this here is for the fire truck turns and it was required radius per the fire marshal's office. The applicant currently has 7 masses for Saturday evening and Sunday services, and the goal for the expansion is to be able to add additional seats and ultimately be able to decrease the number of services that are on Sundays. The existing middle school students will then be relocated to the new church building on the ground floor, which will allow the trailers to be removed from the site permanently. As Patrick mentioned, this is also a phased approach where the rear here will either be a future gymnasium or school. If it is a school, and that also depends on funding that's raised, fundraisers from the church. If it is a school, the middle school children will be relocated from the proposed new church building, and the offices that are currently in the rectory will be relocated to the basement floor of the proposed new church. This slide here is a colored elevation of the landscape plan. So again, the areas here will be undisturbed. The question that you had was regarding the variable width buffer. The BZA requested that a 35-foot type 2 buffer be required. The zoning ordinance only requires a 25-foot buffer. The zoning ordinance also allows for there to be a variable width. So in areas where we cannot make 35 feet, it's made up in other areas. For the most part, it's 35 feet along here. The area where it's not starts approximately here and ends approximately here. And that area is the area that was required for the fire truck turn radius. That area is made up along this area here. So in this area here, it's more than 35 feet. That also applied to where the existing drain fields are. So in the areas where there's existing drain fields, or reserve drain fields, there is no intention at this time to clear that area, but if in the future the reserve drain fields are required, there will be additional plantings that are along this area here and here to make up that 35-foot buffer requirement. This is an illustrative picture of the building elevations. The next 3 slides I'll go through briefly because Patrick already showed them to you. This is the west elevation. This here, is the east elevation. The west elevation is the elevation that you'll see from Ely's Ford Road. These are the north and south elevations of the building. And as Patrick mentioned, there was a height modification request, and if you look at the picture here, you can see that it's higher towards Ely's Ford Road, and as you go down towards the school, there's a significant grade difference of about 12 feet. So the zoning ordinance defines height as the average vertical distance to the average height between eaves and the ridge of a gable from the grade. And because of the grade of the site, it's higher towards the front, and then it dips down towards the rear. The rear is actually 47 feet, and when you take the average, we are 41 feet in height, which is 6 feet over the zoning ordinance requirements. The last request, the applicant worked with county staff and agrees on all of the conditions. However, the applicant is requesting that current condition 6 either be eliminated or be revised to say the development within the identified site boundary of site, and name the site, as depicted in the inserted figure 4 on the GDP is prohibited. However, this condition shall not prohibit the use of reserved drain field location G. If the use of the reserved drain fields are needed on the property, reserved drain field location G shall be the drain field of last resort. This is a unique situation because this is an existing school and church, and they have existing permitted drain fields on site. So to take away the use of one of those drain fields, as Commissioner Newhouse mentioned, has a significant impact on the church. Heavens forbid, if all of the other reserve fields drain, they're in a situation where they either can't expand or the cost to remedy and fix and add a new drain field is significant. And so at that request, we would request that the applicant be able to have reserve drain field G. That concludes my presentation. I know that you all give people time to speak, but if I can maybe save some time and just ask that everybody that's here from the church and support stand, and that could then get rid of some repetitiveness of comments, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me, yeah.
If everybody from St. Patrick's that's in support, can you please stand?
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for the applicant? In terms of the trailers, I want to be clear, when do those get removed? Is that in this first phase?
The trailers will be removed at phase 1 when they can get the occupancy permit for the building and the middle school children can be in the basement. So it is a first phase. As soon as they're able to get the children in the first building, they will do that and the trailers will be removed.
All right, and do you have any other trailers on site that are non-classroom? So they're all classrooms?
They're all classrooms.
Temporary classrooms. Okay, very good. Yeah, I don't have any more questions for you at this point, so I will, any other questions yet? I will open the public hearing to the audience. Again, same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes, as indicated with the green light on the podium. When it turns to yellow, you'll have 1 minute left. In red, I would ask that you wrap it up. And when you come to the podium, state your name and voting district. I'd appreciate that. Your address will do well, just as well, too.
I have Jerry McClure, followed by Maureen McClure. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Newhouse and members of the commission, and all who are here from our parish of St. Patrick's. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Maureen McClure, and I am in the Chancellor District. I live right next to St. Patrick Church at 13300 Irish Brigade Court, Fredericksburg, Virginia. We want to be sure that everyone here understands that we do not want to stop the permit process or building of the new church with school for St. Patrick Parish. This is a difficult situation for me, as we have been registered parishioners of St. Patrick's since 1990. We contributed to the building of the school and to the rectory, and I have served the parish as the music director for the last 25 years. Our sons attended St. Patrick's School, and all three graduated with great success. It is a wonderful school. The parishioners are wonderful people, and the school is outstanding. We have a vested interest in supporting what is best for the parish. My husband and I were both once actively involved in the planning process for the new church and school, particularly the school, recognizing the need to replace these trailers. My husband Jerry was the first chairman of the parish building committee, and I also served on the committee until recently. However, tonight I come before you as a neighbor of St. Patrick Parish. My husband and I have worked very hard to provide this home for our family. It is a key investment for our future. We enjoy our yard, where we like to entertain friends and family. And when we moved here in 2004, there was a distance of at least 50 feet of mature trees between us and the school. The water retention, or the water treatment facility building and large water tank that is to the back of the property was not there. In 2010, as part of the preliminary work to provide backup for their single well and in preparation for infrastructure to build a new school and church, 12 to 15-foot swath of trees was cut in order to drill an additional well and access path to it. The path is as close as 5 feet to our yard in places. Many large, beautiful evergreens were taken down, and the water treatment building was built. As a result, the church, school, and water treatment building and a very large tank are now visible from our backyard at all times, especially during the fall and winter months. At the time the trees were cleared, Father Michael Taylor, the pastor at the time, promised to plant evergreens and mitigate the impact on safety, privacy, and security of our value. However, he was reassigned, and the path remains today. I'm going to ask you to please look at page 1 of the packet that I presented. I've copied the schematic plan that was given last summer to us. Since there have been no meetings, or other information, this is what we believed was going to happen. We asked why the road was moved when we saw page 2. That is the page 4 of the GDP that has been presented. I put a green box around the area that we are concerned about. At the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing on May 15th in 2018, the waiver requested for the height of the church was granted with a condition that 35-foot level 2 transitional buffer would be planted and planned. We are now very disappointed that the width has been averaged and that the service road is still within 25 feet at the closest point. The trees that have grown...
You wrap it up, please.
Yes. The trees that have grown since the building was built will have to be cut down if you look at page 3. If you look on page 2, there is a little star along the border between St. Patrick and us. And there is a little highlighted point. It's point 7. I took pictures there today. This is what the water treatment building looks like to us.
I'm going to have to ask you to.
Okay.
And thank you very much.
We are disappointed that the intention of the zoning authority has not been held to the 35 feet.
Yep, thank you very much.
Jason Fielding and Janelle Fielding. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jerry McClure, husband for Maureen McClure. I know we had a time limit here, but I just wanted to stress a couple points. When we did go to the zoning committee related to the height, we presented with photographs and everything and talked about how the impact of the heightened church would impact the view from our property as well as some of the other items. Our representative made this suggestion, and the group believed at the time that that 35-foot buffer, transitional level 2, which was why it was recommended, was going to offset all the concerns that we had on our property. And when you look at the diagram, exactly where we had the biggest issue we brought to the zoning board is exactly what's not being addressed here, is the place that has the shortest distance. And as my wife shows, they're going to cut down the trees that have been growing there now. So now what we went to thinking that it was a win-win for both of us now turns into a big win for the church. And as homeowners, we're sitting here looking at this view again. And we had some pictures we didn't present, but it does show we're going to see more of the church than the skyline, the new church, and what we've got. The second part I just want to make is that didn't get a chance to talk about is that when this was presented to us, there was no service road. When they had the hearing, there was no service road. The service road materialized because of in some amendments that came. There's been no public hearing that's done the service road with regards to all of us to come into that. We got these documents when we started looking at the height appeal thing that we went to. Believe me, we would have had some objections and talk, not to the church, but objections to the service roads if those were presented as part of the original submission. Okay, thank you.
I think I got a concern.
Jason Fielding, followed by Janelle Fielding.
Janelle's my wife, and she's not here today, so I'll just be me. I just wanted to echo the same concerns that the McClures have, or neighbors with them. But for us, especially one of our concerns is the retention facility. We have small children, a 5-year-old and one younger than that as well. We're just concerned about, we use that space in there and enjoy that part of our property. We're worried about the view, the bugs, the animals, whatever else might be attracted for having the water. But more the safety aspect of it. I know that if there's a huge storm, I guess it can take a couple of days for it to drain away. But I know when initially this very first came out, they talked about having a fence around it, and now I don't, unless it's changed, I don't think there's any fencing around the retention facility. And I guess my question or request for any accommodation would be is if there's any other locations that this can go. I don't know where they have the other drain fields or any of those areas. If it can go further back or to the right or somewhere else, it wouldn't impede or be, there's tons of forest in that area. I don't see where that would, conflict with anything we have on the neighboring side. So that's just my concern is, drowning issues. Kids can drown in small amounts of water, even though it's a foot or two of water. Kids can still drown, or accidents can happen, and we do have kids and family and neighbors and people that come over, and that's just concerning to us. And so that's the main thing that I wanted to bring up and see if there's anything else, any other location, or if there's been any thought into other locations that this could be moved to, where there's more of the wooded area. And you see in the diagrams, there's a large wooded area more over to the right of the diagrams. Why it can't move somewhere else, maybe that would be a solution for the road as well, access road as well. Or at a minimum, if there could be some kind of fencing that could be around it. So that's all.
Craig Cudworth, followed by Janie Cudworth.
Anybody else that wishes to speak? Okay, with that, if you'd like to respond to any of the comments?
I will first start with the location of the service road. Ms. McClure handed out a sheet, and on page 1, was the information that was given at the community meeting that was held. The schematic plan did show a service road. The idea and design for the service road, again, is for the bioretention facility, the well, and then the water treatment facility. This was designed prior to speaking with the fire marshal, who wanted to make sure that they could have access to the rear of the school building. And that being said, that service road was then redesigned. The slide on your screen shows the approximate location of the existing service road here in yellow. And as Ms. McClure had mentioned, in some areas it's about 5 feet away from their property. The proposed service road is being relocated at least 35 feet away from their property, in some instances where it's smaller, 25 feet to accommodate the fire trucks. All of this area within here will be re-landscaped. I've heard a concern about, previously, about making sure that that landscaping is put in place based on previous promises. At the time of site plan, as Patrick mentioned, there will need to be somebody that goes out and does a tree survey of the site to make sure that the plantings are required. In addition, the landscaping is bonded, and so the church will have to put up money in advance of the site plan to make sure that those trees are put in place. So there are mechanisms that will be here to make sure that there is additional landscaping required. The applicant, with a 35-foot buffer requirement, even in the areas where it's only 25 feet, they still will be meeting the plant unit requirements and adding deciduous trees, which is an addition to and a requirement in type 2 buffers that's not required in the type 1 buffer. The service road is not intended to be driven by the church members. It's only in emergency situations and then used to service those facilities. On average, the service of those facilities is 3 to 4 times a year. Other times, there will be a mechanism, either a gate or a chain link with a key and a lock to make sure that others can't travel those facilities. I can answer the question about the bioretention facility as well. That was placed there in order to be able to catch the maximum amount of water. It is a dry facility. It's not a pond that has water all year long. And there is a concern when you talk about wet ponds of mosquitoes growing. Because this is designed to infiltrate and go back, the water to go in the ground within 2 days, that's not enough time for mosquitoes or other bugs to be able to breed. It's also will be heavily landscaped. So the idea of safety concern, we think, has been mitigated with the fact that it's a dry facility. In addition, the facility from the Jennings, I believe, is approximately, his property is here. From here to here is approximately 300 feet away from his property line. So we think that that's enough distance to be able to combat any safety concerns that one may have.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
This pond's going to take sometimes 2-3 days to drain.
The engineer
It
said
can happen that way. Okay, so you got 2 days of 2 or 3 feet of water in there, right?
Light, please.
This is Shannon Madison with RDA. I'm the civil engineer, registered PE in Virginia. The bioretention facility is a engineered soil media mix that goes below a ponding area, okay? And the water will infiltrate through the media down and out and back to the creek. It is designed to do with treatment volume to provide water quality, and it also has overflow mechanisms for larger storm events. The regular 1% probability event that could happen in a year will not hold 2 feet of water. It will be probably more to the lines of 6 to 12 inches.
So this flood we just had wouldn't be no more than 2 feet of water in that pond.
if you had 2 feet in that water in that pond, that would have meant the whole thing's clogged. That's, you know, the emergency kind of hurricane
Gotcha.
condition. You know,
And this media, we talking about stones?
no, it's soil media. There's a, you know, the plants do a lot of work in terms of
I've
removing
seen these
nutrients
ponds
from
filled up
soil.
with stone, and you don't see the water at all.
That's an infiltration basin. That's a little different. That's this is a bioretention. It's relying on the soil and the plants to uptake nutrients for removing. The bioretention also is going to employ a bypass mechanism towards the front of it in the sediment forebay. Well, sorry, pre-treatment cell to the front. It will have a weir that will prohibit anything more than that 2 feet of water going in there. And it will actually engage a lot lower than 2 feet.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or
Mr. Chairman?
comments? Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, the pond is on the church property and it's 300 feet from the property line. Am I correct?
It's 300 feet from the nearest house to the bioretention facility. From their house to the bioretention facility is about approximately 300 feet, not from the property line.
Okay. But it's on the church property.
Correct.
Thank you.
Could we get a fence around it? I mean, isn't that an option to fence it?
The county requirement for a dry pond doesn't require a fence, but if that's the planning commission's recommendation, I believe the church would fence it.
Okay, that should solve that.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have another one.
Sure.
Why can't we have the 35-foot buffer between the resident and the road?
The road was designed to be able to accommodate fire trucks, and as shown, I don't know if it's up on your screen, but this area here was designed for the truck turn radius that would be required, and if you eliminate that truck turn radius, then the fire trucks will not be able to travel the site.
Would it be possible, understanding that this is a two-phase project where you've got the church up front, then a later phase with the school in the back, to locate that road behind your new church, coming down, to the right of you, into that parking lot to the right?
The problem with that is because it's a phased approach, there still needs to be access to the bioretention facility, and with the trailers still being on site until the building is constructed, the road here cuts into where the existing trailers are today.
Right, but if you're building the first phase of the church where the school will be down below in the lower levels, those trailers go away, correct? And then you could have your access road to the back. Is that
correct? But they still have to design an access road in the interim to be able to serve the existing facilities and then the proposed bioretention facility.
But it is an option.
It is an option, but what would happen is they would basically have the existing or the proposed travel way, and then when the church is open, they would have to construct a new travel way.
Okay, and then would it be possible then, when the second phase is constructed, to locate that access road to the rear, which would be to the northeast, to the top of your sheet?
It would be here. There were concerns from the church's perspective, and we've looked at this for a year now. There were concerns from their perspective as to access and safety for the students because the playground is back there. And so the ability to lock it with that design, it actually would impede on the existing playground.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? At this point, I'll close the public hearing portion of this. I'm going to make a motion to approve this special use permit application with the conditions that Patrick, you outlined in the presentation, striking number 6. The alternative for the church, should the worst case scenario happen and not having the ability to utilize that drain field, to me, it would create a far greater problem than respecting the historical nature of that area. But I would like to recommend another condition, that the church and the neighbors work together to, A, maintain that 35-foot buffer, and then to address the safety concerns regarding, not only the pond, but vehicular or pedestrian traffic down that access road. So with that, I motion to approve the application with those two changes in the conditions.
Could you give me those two changes again?
Number one is striking number 6, which is prohibiting the use of the drain field G. And then number 2, adding a condition where the applicant and the neighbors work together to address safety concerns, and then also to maintain that 35-foot buffer.
If I could just offer, honestly, a concern. I don't know how we would enforce the condition about the church and the neighbors working together.
Well, here's my concern. I totally appreciate the, to me, I think there's some alternatives that can be worked through. If the access road has to go there and it's a life safety issue, then I respect that. But I would at least like the opportunity for the neighbors who have expressed safety concerns meet with the church to work this out prior to going to the board. If, obviously we can't hold them to it, but that's what,
Okay,
I could be more definitive and just say, we want the 35-foot buffer.
That's true.
Maintained.
I understand what your intent is. Could I offer that be more of a recommendation than an additional condition?
Recommendation. I'm fine with that language. If the applicant and our folks in the, but I would like, I would like that discussion to take place.
And could we also add the fence pot?
Yeah.
Fence the pond?
I'm fine with that as well.
You're not making that part of your motion to put a fence up. Is that?
No, I
is
would
that
like
what
to
I'm
add,
hearing?
I would like to add that, to secure the pond. I mean, we've got,
So let's do this. So I've made a motion on the floor. I would take a motion to, I think the proper way to do this is to revise my motion, if I understand the Robert's Rules of Order correctly. So the motion would be to include a safety fence around the pond to the motion I made. Is that correct? So we have that motion. Do I have a second on it?
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So the motion, do I take a? Smith and? Yep, okay, well, all right, let's discuss the motion, absolutely.
I just have a problem with that. I understand where you come from, but look right behind us. We don't have a fence around a holding pond right here next to the school. Well, I mean, why are we making the church put a fence up when we're not making other people do it? We got these holding ponds all up and down the highway, all around subdivisions.
If I may add, we have one at Crossroads and it's got a fence.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to let you know that fencing is required for holding ponds unless they're designed in a way that there's a safety shelf essentially. So there is the possibility that the pond could be designed in a way that a fence would not be required. So if a fence is desired no matter what, that should be a condition.
But is this pond that we're talking about designed that doesn't need it?
Larger detention basins that are exceeding depth. This is at 2 feet. I could, look up the depth, but 2 feet I've never had it required before.
Mr. Chair,
As a point of order, you actually took a vote on a motion.
Yep.
The motion should have been restated, number one, because it became fairly complex. But because you actually took a vote on that, somebody should make a motion to reconsider, and that should be voted on. I think you all it sounds like you all want to approve it because the motion to reconsider is to reconsider the vote that you just took, because Commissioner Smith wanted to.
Discuss the issue,
Yes.
yeah. All right, so walk me through this. And we now need a motion to reconsider.
To allow yourself to get to the point of discussion, somebody needs to make a motion to reconsider the vote that was just taken, the motion that was just approved, because your motion was just approved.
Yep, so.
I
And
move
read
to
the
make that
motion. Could I
motion.
hear that motion again? Who's going to repeat it?
I'll repeat it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may he repeat that motion?
The chair made the motion.
So the motion
4
is,
to 3,
the
I
motion is to reconsider the
3 and
last
4.
vote.
Correct. And your motion had, in your conversation with Patrick, when you made your motion, you added part of it to, and Paulette, help me out here. Did you get it, Paulette, the whole thing? All right, we might actually ask the secretary to restate the motion that was voted on, what was included, because you went from requesting a condition to saying it would be okay to be a recommendation, if I remember correctly. So if you let the secretary restate that motion, restate what was voted on and approved, and then somebody make a motion to reconsider that, if you all approve the reconsideration, or if the majority approves the reconsideration, you can then go ahead and open discussion again on the very thing that you're discussing right this second.
The motion that I have is a motion by Mr. Newhouse to approve with the conditions recommended by staff, but striking number 6. And he also recommends that the applicant, St. Patrick's Church, and the neighbors work together regarding maintaining that 35-foot buffer. That's what I had.
Right, and then Mr. Bullock asked for a friendly amendment to be added to that.
The friendly amendment was to include a fence around the pond.
Right, and Mr. Newhouse agreed to that, so that got added to the motion
Correct.
to add a fence around the pond, and I believe it was a 6-1 vote.
I missed the vote, though. I never heard.
2.
I never
I voted for
heard
it.
who voted what.
And he voted for it.
I voted for it.
And I did too.
Right, okay, so
what was the
that was
vote?
the motion. So if somebody wants to if you would like to continue discussing this, if somebody would like to make a motion to reconsider what was just approved, which is what Paulette just read, then somebody needs to go ahead and make that motion. You need to vote on that to reconsider the
All
the
right, so let's
matter
clean
that-
this up, yeah.
Okay.
I move to reconsider the vote.
Second.
Go ahead and vote on that.
Vote
But
on that.
technically, do I need a discussion on it? Any discussion
technically,
on
you
it?
probably do.
Any discussion on it? Okay, hearing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, the vote is reconsidered.
Correct. So the motion that you made that was approved has now been taken away, as it were, and you now can reconsider what it is you would like to do, because you're reconsidering the vote, because somebody wanted to reconsider the issue of the fence, I believe it was.
Right, so that's the issue before us now, is the fence, because we
Actually, the entire motion, you now have not voted on this project.
Okay.
Because you just rescinded that by reconsidering your vote.
All right, but my original motion still stands.
If you wish it to, you should remake it.
Okay. This is a great civics lesson. All right, I move to approve special use permit, SUP, where am I, 17, I don't have my glasses, 17-0006, with the conditions laid out in the presentation, striking number 6. In addition, a recommendation to maintain the 35-foot buffer and to consider safety fence around the pond and other safety concerns of the neighbors.
Very good.
Second.
Now, so we have a second, now we can have the discussion.
So when you say consider, does that mean, what does that mean? Like,
So what I mean by that is, as I butchered before, it seems to me there's a better location for the access road. So let me talk to that first. If at the end of the discussion that it is determined because of life safety issues, the road has to go there, then I'm fine with that. But I'm not convinced of that, and I think the applicant and the neighbors need to get together and talk about the safety concerns and understand that, and look for options for different locations of that maintenance road. But again, if at the end of the day, if that's the only location where it can go in, I don't want to deny this project because of it.
I was more concerned about the fence, and that if the fence, like requiring it, because I think that having it be 2 feet and having the water drain would be okay, would be acceptable. So when that was the part with the consider that I was worried about.
Right, so in that regard, I'm going to defer to what the civil engineer states as to what type of pond it is. It's a bioretention facility, it's a dry pond, and defer to the experts in that regard. If again, through these discussions that the church will acquiesce and agree to put a fence in, I'm fine with that, but if technically it's proven it's not required and the county and the church is comfortable with that, I'm fine with that as well.
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do promote having a fence. If I had children, I would feel the same way. I would want all the safety factors that I could have. And I do not believe that putting a fence up will certainly break anyone. God will provide. And for the safety issues that we need for our children, I believe with all of my heart that a fence, if it's necessary to satisfy parents today who care about their children, then it be considered from the church to put up a fence. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question about the road and your wording there with the recommendation that the church and the neighbors work together for determination of if it's necessary to preserve life, and property. Shouldn't that have fire and rescue involvement in that in some way, shape, or form? Because ultimately they're the ones that are going to have to be responding to that.
Yes, it does, and what I would hope would happen is that all the parties get together and decide, come to an agreement that we've looked at these different conditions, it absolutely has to go there. I just want that opportunity for the neighbors to have their voices heard with the church to express their concerns, and I'm sure the church will, consider their requests and have that discussion.
This question goes to staff. So I can't remember my short time on the Planning Commission, us presenting something to the board as approved or denied with a recommendation like this. How would that be handled at the board level to where, if it's the will of this commission, through the vote, that gets carried out, if you will?
That has happened in the past. It's fairly rare, but essentially, we would ask that the applicant work with the neighbor and staff between now and the Board of Supervisors hearing, and we would provide any additional recommendation at that point in time to the board, explaining to them that that additional recommendation is in response to the Planning Commission's desire that this be further examined.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. I've spent my entire life in public safety, so I certainly care about the kids, and I don't mean this that I don't, but I just don't think it's fair to make the church, whether it's a little amount or a large amount, whether they can afford it or not afford it, to make them have to pay for something that we don't require other people to do. It's just not fair. It's incumbent upon the parents to keep their children from off the church property when there's not an event going on there to begin with. They shouldn't be over there playing. So I don't think it's fair to make the church pay for that. That's all. I care about the safety of the kids, but I don't think it's fair to make the parents make the church pay.
Yeah, but the motion does not require that. Correct?
That's right.
Correct.
It's
That's correct.
Yep, okay.
Consider.
So, well, yes, sir.
Could we, I hate to do this. Could we
Restate the motion?
Could you read the motion just so we're all clear on what it says? I apologize.
No worries.
Oh, I'm so glad you did.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Newhouse to approve SUP 17-0006 with conditions recommended by planning staff, striking number 6. In addition, he'd like to recommend that the church work with the neighbors to consider the safety fence and other safety concerns that have been raised. It was seconded by Mr. Bullock. Hold on. If it's determined, Mr. Newhouse stated that if it was determined that for life safety issues, the road has to go there, then he is fine by that. And he defers to the civil engineer that the pond is a bioretention dry pond. And
The only add I have to that is maintaining that 35-foot buffer. So it's to maintain the 35-foot buffer and to consider the safety and privacy issues
Okay.
of the neighbors, work with the church, and then consideration of the safety fence.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I ask one question of staff or of representation there of the church. What is the narrowest part? I know it's where that turn radius is. What is that average? What is that distance, not average? What is that distance right there, the most narrow part?
The narrowest part is approximately 25 feet, and that is an improvement over the 5 feet that's the existing trail today.
And required, I know the BZA put a transition 2 in.
Correct.
Required, though, would be a transition 1, and that is 25 feet?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on this very complicated motion?
Let it go.
Let it go, Ms.
Call for the
Carter. That's the
question.
best advice I've heard tonight. So with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Thank you, Patrick. Next item on the agenda is new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under new business, we have 2 items to request that the Planning Commission authorize for public hearings. These are continuations of the zoning update that has been going on for the last couple years. And the first item is related to the rezoning section of the code. Many of the changes are grammatical. There are also ones to bring us consistent with the Code of Virginia. And there are some that bring our practice in line with, or our code in line with some of the practice that we've had over time. There is one substantive change, and it is to add a new section within the rezoning section of the code. Proffer of conditions section that states that requirements related to the dedication of land to the county, that there are some specific requirements. Right now, the code does not speak to that. But basically, what we're trying to do here is ensure that any land that's dedicated to the county, and I'm talking about land for a public facility or a park, I'm not talking about like right-of-way dedication, that land can be used for the intended purpose, that we're getting good usable land that's not constrained by environmental issues or hazardous waste or anything along those lines. And to also ensure that the value that's attributed to that land by the applicant is a fair and reasonable value. This is something that used to be in our proffer guidelines, but when we eliminated the proffer guidelines, we no longer have this anywhere, so we've gone ahead and added it to the code for consideration under public hearing. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and otherwise, a motion to authorize public hearings would be appropriate.
Any questions or comments?
I just think it's a great idea.
I do too.
So with that, I make the motion.
Can I have a second?
Public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Any other?
Yes, there's one more.
Yep.
And that one is related to the site plan review section of the code. Again, there are, the majority of the amendments are grammatical in nature to ensure consistency with the Code of Virginia and also internally consistency within our own ordinances. There is a section that we've enhanced in there that clearly states that plan review fees must be paid within 6 months of approval of the plan, or the plan will be void. Sometimes we have site plans that are approved and then they sit for years. Technically, there is another section of the code that allows for a number of extensions to go to a 6-month period. So that's why I am putting here the 6 months to make that consistent. And also to make clear that plats, that applicants, once they have their site plan approved, they need to follow through with any plats, get those approved and recorded that dedicate utility easements or right-of-way that are required by the site plan, so that the county can then have that full package that is required by the county. I do have one additional item that I would like to add to this, if you could pass this. Just recently came up in the last week. It is since this section of the code, I am adding some definitions to define different types of site plans. For example, a trail plan versus an infrastructure plan versus a building addition plan. And came across a code section that the county falls under related to cluster subdivisions. And when I was reviewing it, I felt that our open space definition was not consistent with the Code of Virginia. The Code of Virginia actually says that if you're doing a cluster subdivision, the county cannot ask for information related to your slopes on your property, or the county cannot prohibit vehicular surfaces to go through open space areas if those roads are to access the cluster development. So what I did here was add a sentence at the end to make our code consistent with the Code of Virginia, exempting those two items from review in the cluster subdivisions.
So you need a motion on that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And just so I ask, this is just to open the public hearing for this, and we'll go
Yeah,
through
we'll
it more in depth.
we'll schedule the public hearing
Especially
for
this
July.
last one, I've got a whole bunch of questions. Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments from Wanda? I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the motion.
For public hearing.
Public hearing, excuse me.
Second. Let's go.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Any other public comment on any unrelated application this evening? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much.